What's the word, YouTube? Going over a leg day that I did on Saturday, January the 8th, 2022. Starting off with some calf stretches. So I'm doing a calf stretch with a straight leg. For me, that gets up a little bit closer to the gastrocnemius muscle, which is a little bit closer to the knee. And then I get into some bent knee calf stretches after that. So these bent knee calf stretches get the soleus muscle. It's a little bit closer to the ankle is where you feel that stretch. And I usually can't go really far into that stretch, but that's okay. I mean, it's just a tight muscle. But this has really helped me with my squat mobility, as far as being able to get down into the squat and be comfortable and mobile. Ankle mobility has really played an important role in getting ready for deep squats. Next up, I'm going to go on the Hyperextension machine and really stretch and strengthen the whole posterior chain. So we're thinking lower back, glutes, hamstrings, adductors, calves, pretty much everything in the back. So what I like to do is when I get down into that stretch there, I like to hold my lower back muscles really tense. So the whole time my lower back muscle, I'm trying to keep it tense. And then I pull myself into the bottom of the post there using my lats and my biceps. But still trying to keep the lower back tense and keep the glutes tense all the way through that range of motion. Then I come up, arch the back, squeeze the glutes, and that really helps me loosen up my hamstrings, lower back, all that good stuff. Next up is a child's pose to cobra stretch. So going into child's pose, back into the cobra stretch, and I mainly do this for the cobra stretch just to get my abdominals a stretch, get them kind of loose and ready for squats. Helps me stay upright. Up next, the ATG split squat. Got this from Knees Over Toes guy. He's a popular YouTuber with some solid content. If you haven't heard of him already, you should definitely check out his channel. But this gets the hip flexors on the back side, because those tend to get tight, especially if I've been sitting a lot. Gets the hip flexors on the back side stretched out, kind of warmed up. Gets the quad on the front side warmed up. Up next is the Cossack squat. So that gets me primed for squatting as well. Gets the adductors ready to go. Gets the quads too from a wide angle. This brings us to our first exercise, just doing some warm-ups for the barbell hip thrust now. I don't worry too much about how many reps I'm going to do for my warm-ups, but oftentimes I'll use like an 8-6-4-2 rep scheme before I do my hard set. So that was 135, and we're working with 225 next. Just getting a couple quality reps in with that. I'm really making a point to connect with my glute muscle. I feel like this exercise is really helpful for getting gravity right onto the glutes there. Next up, going hard. Really trying to get the squeeze in the glutes at the top. There's just really no other movement that does this motion as it seems to, do this motion as effectively as a hip thrust does. Just getting my glutes helping me out with lockouts on deadlifts. This lift is immensely helpful. I like to do it before lifts that are even harder, because it just doesn't seem to have that much fatigue carry over to your other exercises. So I like to do this lift first. As you can see, we got a good dig going on there. Really giving it best effort. Going real hard. Alright. Up next, we got a warm up for high bar back squats. So I just start off with the bar, kind of get a feeling for it. Making sure the knees descend in line with the toes, trying to get some good fold of the knees over the toes, that way I get my quads. That's really what I like to do this exercise for, is getting those big quads. Trying to keep the lower back and the glutes squeezed as well. Just staying upright as best as you can. I like to touch the pins at the bottom just to make sure that I'm traveling the same distance every time, and that I'm, a rep is a rep is a rep. That's what you're working with. So first warm up was 135. We're going to move to 185 next. Just staying looking straight ahead, keeping the chest out, trying to stay upright. Up next is 225. Just working with singles from here on. Don't want to fatigue too much or anything. Just getting those motor units primed. Okay. 255 up next. All right. .280. So this is going to be my top set, but I'll do a quick 1 rep with 280 just to give the nervous system a chance to understand what we're about to do. Be ready. Okay. So there's my hot single. And before I go hard, I like to take in fast inhales and exhales to really get that primal energy going. Sometimes I'll grunt, sometimes I'll yell. You just gotta let it loose. We're about to go real hard. Exciting PR. This was an all-time squat PR for me. I've never been like really great at squats or anything. Never been a big powerhouse. 280 for 10 on this set. We're going real hard. I've been stuck on like 280 for 9, 275 for 10. Those kind of ranges. So it was nice to finally progress. We will hit 285 next week. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but you just try to get your sets in and do what you can. Up next is hamstring works. We're going to get, hamstring knee flexion specifically. Going to do some Nordic leg curls and try to get warmed up for that using a little bit of support. I can only get as far as like 45 degrees in the letdown, and I just can't hold it for very long. My knee flexion, either my upper body just weighs a ton, or my knee flexion is just not that strong right now. But I'm trying to work into it and just get a little bit better every single time, which seems to be what's happening. Really difficult exercise. This is probably the hardest bodyweight exercise I've ever done. Beats the heck out of a pull-up. Way harder than a pull-up. I'm trying to go ahead and go hard on this set, but this is one of those few times that I actually end up doing another set, just because I just want to get better at it. So we're adding in another set after 2 to 3 minutes rest. Not only does this get your hamstrings, it also gets your calves. Your calves can perform knee flexion. So yeah, hamstrings and calves on this one. Up next, plantar flexion. So we're doing some paint peelers here. Working with 225. I'm going to try and get 10. I believe I did, so I'll up it to 230 next week. But I like to have a standardized distance that I raise up, so I try to touch the very top hole, and then I'll start from my heels touching the floor. So I try to get that squeeze all the way through. Keeping straight legs. And you stretch at the bottom, full squeeze at the top. I kind of lean. I use a 45-pound plate as my foot wedge, and I like to lean that bar up against the post. That way, it kind of slides up and down, turns it into more of a machine, and you don't really have to you don't have to balance as much. Up next is sartorius work. So this is that seat belt that runs along the inside of your quads. I'm working with a 10-pound kettlebell here. Nothing fancy. Just keeping my belly up against the bar. This is a tough exercise. You know, with that foot rotated outwards, it just really targets that sartorius, and it's a very hard hitting exercise. Switching over to the left leg, I really just go straight into a hard failure set with these kind of exercises. It's a smaller muscle group, so I like to go straight into a hard set. I feel like everything's already warmed up and borderline fatigue, so might as well just go ahead and hit it. For the longest time, I was an idiot. I just didn't train hip flexion. But once I started training hip flexion a few months ago, specifically training hip flexion maybe like a year ago, my hip flexors have grown a lot. So my sartorius is actually starting to show now. It appears like the top of my quads that join into my hip and my torso, as well as the bottom of the torso, appears more developed too, just in that short time frame. So it may be worth it to throw into your program. It definitely helps out with squatting leverages as well. I know a lot of Olympic lifters talk about how the hip flexors are neglected. Sprinters train hip flexors all the time, and what do you know, their legs are usually really jacked. So this next one, I've got my foot turned straight, and this will target the iliopsoas and the rectus femoris just a little bit more than the sartorius, but those are your three main hip flexor groups: is the iliopsoas, the rectus femoris, and the sartorius. Next up, I'm going to do some tibialis anterior work here. So trying to get those buff tibs, getting some dorsiflexion in. Trying to get a good stretch and a squeeze as far as I can. I was using a serious steel 40-pound band. This muscle doesn't really grow a lot. It doesn't have like a ton of growth potential, but I figure it can be a good counterbalance to all the plantar flexion that I do, and I wanted to get that muscle, get my lower legs as big as possible, because they're kind of a weak point for me, in case you couldn't tell. So yeah, I've been working with the tibs a good bit. Alright, meatheads, I think that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll be back.